I think one of the things that investors can do for companies is up-leveling their aspiration. And why is this such an obsession with you? I want to hear some obsession. If you are building a company to solve a problem for a specific type of customer, you need to love that customer. You need to really empathize with that customer, because that is what leads to non-obvious insights that help you build great businesses. There is a future. This is my life. This is my life's work. And that's the kind of stuff I want to hear. I'm like, okay, if this is your life's work, this is what you want to do for the rest of your life, how the hell can I not be along for the ride?
I'm Anand Daniel. Today, I'm joined by Gokul Rajaram, a product expert, operator, board member, and one of the most helpful early stage investors. Gokul helped scale AdSense at Google, led ads product at Facebook, served in product roles at Square and DoorDash, and has backed over 300 companies, including Airtable, Postman, Figma, CRED, and the list goes on. Beyond the check, he works hands on with founders on product, growth, hiring, and ideas. Lots to learn from Gokul. Let's get into it. Okay, Gokul, welcome. Thank you for joining, and it's a pleasure. I've known you for a long time, so hopefully through this, the audience, which are founders everywhere, get to know you a little bit more as well. So the first thing I want to start with is maybe get your perspective on, you have made back more than 300 companies, many great ones, right? Let's start about how do you go about picking these startups. Maybe you'll start with that, if that's okay with you. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. First of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. I've been a huge fan of yours and Excel's for 20 plus years. Both Excel India and Excel US. You've both been amazing brands, and so trying to learn. One of the things about investing is that it always humbles you. So you always have to keep refining. But the one thing I've seen that has stayed constant for me over the last 15, 17 years I've been angel investing and investing early stage companies is authenticity of the founder story for me matters a lot. In other words, why is this founder the right fit for this problem, and why are they obsessed with this problem? What has led to, not even why, are they obsessed with this problem they're solving? So I want to understand, have they steeped themselves into this domain for months or years? For example, I've seen a couple of founders who basically went and worked at the business in the role before they basically said, okay, I understand this business, how it works, these roles as an IT consultant or something like that, or even as an employee, and then they went and automated it. And so I want that level, because if you are building a company to solve a problem for a specific type of customer, you need to love that customer. You need to really empathize with that customer, because you have to day in and day out service this type of customer for 10, 15 years. It can't just be a theoretical thing where you read about this in TechCrunch or something and say, I'm going to start a business servicing this kind of customer. So that authenticity of the founding story, and that is what leads to non-obvious insights that help you build great businesses. So that matters a lot to me. So the first question, almost the first set of questions I ask is, tell me your founding story. And what I want to hear is a clear thread that goes around, what are the authentic experiences you've had in this vertical, in this business, in this problem statement that have caused you to go and start this company? And why is this such an obsession with you? I want to hear some obsession.
Got it. So founder obsession is one, and any other filters that you look for before you decide to invest in that initial check, because there's no I'm guessing not too much metrics, maybe there's some cases no product also, right?
Yes, exactly. I think problem obsession. I think the other thing is they are a long-term thinker. When, for example, if you say, I remember, I forgot which founder it was, I told them, hey, this is a little bit too early for me. Let's, I'm an early stage investor, hopefully at your next company or something like that, we'll do something in the future. Like, look, there is a future. This is my life. This is my life's work. And that's the kind of stuff I want to hear. I'm like, okay, if this is your life's work, this is what you want to do for the rest of your life, how the hell can I not be along for the ride? And so I think you want that life, you want this to be their life. And so I really don't like founders who do 3 or 4 things at the same time. Obviously, people like Elon can pull it off. But I think, founders who are too much on the startup circuit and advising, and to be honest, I made that same mistake. I think I didn't do a good job as a founder because 30% of my time was spent advising. I was in 2, 3 boards, and all of that stuff takes away your mental focus. I was not obsessed enough You have to put 110% of your time on this company thinking about the problems facing, not 70% of your time, because this is the opposite of glamorous. If you're looking for glamour, it's not going to come in the first few years. There is no glamour. It's grit. And so you want to make sure people understand. The ones who are doing it for glamour or for like coolness or for being in TechCrunch or to go to parties or, conferences, that's not the founder I want at least.
Any founders that come to mind when you think of this prototype, like the prototypical founder you're thinking of, right? So,
I think Figma is a great example. I was an early investor in Figma. See this
congrats.
around 2012. Yeah, thank you, thank you. Dylan has built a great company, and the first 4 years, he was just building a community. He didn't have a product, a paying customer till 2016 or 15 or 16. So 3 to 4 years, he was building a community, getting feedback, talking to designers, and that's what he was doing day in and day out. And so people look at him as like he's an angel investor now. He does a bunch of things, but for the first several years, he was basically just sitting at his house and basically building this and going out and meeting with designers and living and breathing that problem.
That's a really good example there. And maybe as you've been investing, what has changed? Like any changes in the approach for angel investing and or investing in general, and what have you stopped doing? Maybe.
Good question. I think one thing, I used to be a super high volume angel investor about 10 years ago. And I would do like 30, 40, sometimes even 50. I think there were years I did 50 investments in a year, one a week, extremely high volume. And I realized that even though it was financially high performing, my satisfaction level went down when I did high volume investments because I was unable to build a connection with any one company. And they needed me the most. I was unable to be proactive, I should say, with them. When you have 50 investments, you can't be proactive. You basically are available. And I was always very, very quick to respond, but I was not proactively thinking about their problems that they're facing. Now I'm doing like a much smaller number. In fact, I've started a firm, so we're doing a much smaller number of higher conviction investments a year, 4 to 5 a year. So, that, that, and so that's one thing I've changed. The second one is I used to commit to the founder after the first meeting 10, 15 years ago. Literally after the one meeting, I would literally, at the end of it, after thinking about it, I would just at the end of the meeting itself, I would be able to make a decision. But I realized that this was suboptimal, both for them and me, because I just needed to do a little bit more time. I think you need to just do a little bit more work, and it doesn't need to be like a venture firm like work, at least when I was an angel. But just understanding what the competitive landscape looks like. Are there other competitors? So I've regretted many times in the early days falling in love with the company because I had not heard about the space before. They'd be, wow, this is an incredible space. But then I would, I would meet a company and I would invest in the first company I met in the space. But then I got introduced to another company 4 weeks later. I'm like, oh my God, if I just did a Google search, I'd have known that there were three other companies and I should have gone and met them before I committed to the first company. And it was not ideal for me or for the founder that I just like, because I was like, I was always in my mind comparing my investment to this other company, and I was always never excited. And so that probably showed in my interactions with the founder.
Mm. So you take a lot more time now, do like a few
I mean,
investments.
right now, yeah, I'm starting a venture firm.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are four of us. We make 5 to 6 investments a year. So basically 1 to 1.5 investments a person a year. So it is the opposite of my volume.
Got it. Yeah, that's a big change. And then let's move to you've invested and heard from people who've invested and you help them through any pivotal moments, right? So, uh, talk to us a little bit about maybe even with an example. How do you work with the company? How do you help them change the trajectory? Whatever comes to your mind.
Yeah, one company I was thinking about this, as you said that, one company that comes to mind is a company called Printify. It is a leader in the print on demand space. So basically, if you want to create t-shirts or hats or something for your brand, you could basically use Printify. I invested in them about a decade ago in the pre-seed round. Was I think for 500 startups incubated them, or they were the accelerator. I invested right out of 500. I led the pre-seed round, so I introduced them to their seed investor, co-led the seed round. They recently merged with another company in a 10-figure deal actually. So they valued at slightly more than $1 billion. So that one I helped them in several ways over the years. Um, two things tangibly, I think that I'm proud of. One, I helped them establish outcome-based OKRs. what happens at many companies is their goal setting is very output focused. They're like, well, launch XYZ features, launch ABC stuff. It's like a list of things that they're doing. I help them rethink how they were thinking about their goal setting and have them think of what are the outcomes you have as a company. Let's make them goals and let's then organize our activities under the goals versus just listing a set of activities. So really map activities to outcomes in a more structured way and then have the notion of a DRI, which is a clear owner for each of these outcomes. And then underneath that, maybe the activity owners. So that was one. The second one was, I think, up-leveling their aspiration. I think there was a year, I think 17 or 18, where they were a few billion in revenue. They were growing like 60, 70%. I refused to let them grow at that rate. I said, look, I know that's your plan, but I'm not going to accept anything less than 100%, and neither should you. So show me a plan to get to 100% growth. I didn't tell them what to do. I just tell them, show me a plan. And they went back, figured it out, and showed a plan, and they hit it. And so I think one of the things that investors can do for companies is up-leveling their aspiration, which is really, I think, Moritz is a good example at Sequoia, where when he met David Yang and Jerry Filo in their trailer, he told them, you remind me of Steve Jobs at Apple. At that instant, he like reframed how they thought of themselves. So I think reframing their aspirations and making it so that they don't think of this as a small company. They think they have the potential to change the world is something that we can do for them.
That's a great insight. And you talked about like reframing, and in this particular example, making them go after speed and scaling faster. And that needs to be balanced with not uh, making the customer experience worse off or the product quality. Any thoughts on that? Like how does a company think about balancing those two things?
I think it depends on the type of company you are. If you're a company where your customer depends on your company to run their day-to-day business, good example is Square, where we're building a point of sale. We cannot, do daily pushes. I mean, we've got to be very careful and thoughtful, because if something breaks, QA has to be an important part of the process. So every Square POS push first went to, because these are things that are already on the app, in the app store. You download the POS, and we can't just deploy a hotfix very easily, because they have to download it from the app store. So especially something. So it went through an alpha set of customers, then a beta, and it was pretty fast, a few weeks, where it wasn't a daily push. You couldn't push POSs daily to customers. But Facebook, you could push daily. Why? Because Facebook is completely on the cloud, and second, it's not a business critical thing. It is, especially on the consumers. And now it might have become, but at least in the early days, multiple times a day you could push the site or service. And it might go down once in a while, but you move fast and break things. So I think it depends on the kind of company you are and where in the customer's life, what role you play in the customer's life. And
Got it.
so it's a continuum between speed and functionality, and where you are in the continuum depends on what role you play.
Got it. That's super helpful. And maybe let's talk about on the scaling side, what are some common mistakes you see founders make? It could be the 0 to 1 or the 1 to 10, like whichever journey you want to pick.
Almost always it's about the people at these stages. And there are two mistakes I see founders make. At the 0 to 1, they basically award titles too fast. They basically see especially some friends who start companies. You'll see one of them is the CEO, the other is the COO, the third is the CTO, and the fourth is the CPO. And you're like, you know, they already said this thing, and then anyone who comes, and then they start giving VP titles like candy, and then you've basically exhausted, you for these early folks, and so I think avoiding titles too early is a huge mistake, and everyone then starts asking for titles, and then the whole company is consumed, and everyone is a director and a AVP and a VP. And yes, there might be some times once you're a few hundred people, but the longer you can defer that, the better. The first, as you know, the 0 to 1 journey is all about finding PMF. Otherwise, you die. The titles don't matter. So that's why. The second one is, I think, especially to the AI world, which is leaning too much on people's prior titles and roles and companies and making them an offer and thinking they're going to do just as well at your startup. And I think, just because you worked at a FANG as a VP of engineering doesn't mean at all that you can succeed at a Series A company as an eng lead. And in fact, it's much more true. I posted about this 2-3 days ago about the fact that AI makes credentials, I shouldn't say worthless, but it really removes the value out of credentials and experience and all the other markers of what we think of as success, because everything has to be rethought And how can you manage or lead in an AI-centric, AI-native world when you don't know how to use the tools yourself? And so I feel like, executives, managers especially, it's much better, I think, to promote from within if you can, or bring them in for in a role where you start them off as an IC or as one or two levels junior to what they were. But I think hiring someone directly as an exec from a large firm it could go well. Like Sheryl Sandberg with Facebook, it went really well. But Facebook was a later stage company also. Sheryl joined Facebook when it was slightly later. It wasn't super early, but still it went really well. But I've seen enough cases that it can absolutely torpedo a company. I had a situation, a portfolio company, where the person, the CEO, brought in a COO from a very large company on the advice of the board members who said, yeah, you need like a CEO. Turns out the CEO, it was a 50% company. The CEO started to institute a bunch of processes like reviews, performance reviews, and so on. It was super heavyweight for that size company. And so the CEO protested. The CEO overruled the CEO, said, no, we're not going to do this. The CEO complained to the board that the CEO is not a good CEO and quit the company. And then the board's mind, it was like the CEO, it's your fault. You didn't do a good job here. And then they basically got rid of the CEO 6 months later. That it was their fault. They weren't able to hire. So it's not the fault of anyone. It's just not a good fit to bring a heavyweight executive into a young company in most cases.
Got it. So one of the biggest things to watch out for is the team that you're building, and it's the right set of people for the right stage of the company. That's super helpful. Maybe switching gears, talking about like you have many founders, you built really good relationship with them, many of them. So just talk about how you go about that, and especially in harder situations or when you strongly feel different from the founder and you have to disagree. Like any tips on that, or how do you go about that? And there's more from not just the investor point of view, and who the best founders have taken that also. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think earning a founder's trust is hard. You earn it, as I say, success has many fathers, while failure is an orphan, right? So what happens is investors love to work with successful companies, but when companies are not doing well, many investors, fair weather investors, just flee. They don't engage with the company. And so I think the best way to earn a founder's trust is to be there for them consistently throughout thick and thin, truly, through thin and thick, I should say. So being there for them when things are going badly, offering constructive advice, I think, not being like, oh, the sky is falling. You're like a bad CEO. We're going to fire you. But like, get to the root cause of the problem. Let's see what's not working. Let's figure out a way forward. Being constructive, being helpful, being supportive, and not just being a rah-rah person when things are going well and disappearing, or, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. What the hell is going on? And I think I've seen this, especially 21 to 23, the same investors in many cases who were basically the Rara founders. As soon as the mark started in 23 started going bad, they were the ones who had gotten these founders to raise ungodly amounts of money, and then they went and said, oh, you were a shit CEO and I'm going to fire you, or you've got to do stuff, and complete lack of loss of trust. So I think non-judgmental, objective, helpful, constructive versus casting blame, I would say, is the core of it. And
Got it.
so yeah, in terms of handling the situations that I disagree strongly with the founder's decision, look, whether it's an investor, board member, or advisor, I always frame my advice as advice. Say, this is my opinion, my advice, and then ultimately tell them it's your decision, because ultimately you're running the company. Most decisions are two-way decisions and can be reversed, right? Two-way door decisions, so they can be reversed. So I don't push. But when it's a one-way door decision, that's when and there is massive disagreement, that's when my goal is not to really say the founder should listen to me, but it's more, please take some extra time, talk to as many people as possible, get a wide range of opinions, make a list of pros and cons, understand the different choices you have, the alternatives, and then make a decision. Take an extra week to make the decision for one-way door decision. So I think the key thing I want to instill in founders is understanding which ones are reversible and
Mm,
which ones are not, and that it's okay to make reversible decisions fast. It's okay because you have to reverse them, and to track it, and if it's not working well, make it fast, but reverse it. The non-reversible ones are where it's not even whether it's more that I want to make sure they're being thoughtful. They're not just taking opinions from like three people, But the more impactful relation is, the more different types of people you want to talk to. So my goal is to introduce them to more people who've been in their shoes, who made simulations, who maybe one or two years ahead of them, etc., so they can get a full range of perspectives and really outline the pros and cons of the different and have a wide range of alternatives that they can consider.
So when you think about this, when you think of some of the successful founders, right, or founders that have lived up to that potential, exceeded it, any predictions, any signals you pick up, like, and you can share, talk about some examples also that predicted the.
One of the best signals, I think, with this, unfortunately, this only you do after you start working with them,
Right.
or it's hard to do it while you're not working with them. But what you see is successful founders are somewhat dispassionate about people. They care about people deeply, but they don't fall in love with people where they don't say, "Oh my gosh, I can never let go of this person." They know that any person is, if they are not able to keep up with the growth and they are being a hurdle to the company's growth, they put the company before people. So they dispassionately are able to let go of people in a kind and empathetic way. That's, I mean, I shouldn't, some great founders do it in a less kind way, but most importantly, they put the company first and they're able to objectively say, this person, yeah, they were with me from day one in my dorm room or whatever, but at this point, this is not the right skill set. I need someone different to come in and take the company to the next level, and they're able to make that decision. And the founders who struggle with it, they're challenged, because the reality is, as you go great companies, you've got to do that at every stage, probably at every round, at every 10x. And you've seen this with Swiggy and so on. I mean, you've got to be able to do that. If you're not able to do that, I mean, look at Zuck at Facebook. I mean, he's just done it time and again, and that's founder mode. I think that's what the founder has the unique right to be able to do that. Even if and then the other one is, you are able to promote people from within the org, even if it means disrupting the org. Great example is at Square. I saw Jack Dorsey. Basically, there was this guy Brian Grassadonia. He was an IC product manager, and Jack wanted to start a business called Cash App at Square, fintech consumer service, and he promoted Brian from an IC, brought him into the management team to lead this business. Uh, there were many other candidates who probably felt they could do a better job, but Brian did an incredible job, and Jack was able to see that. And so Jack Welch was the same thing. I think Jack was 2 or 3 levels below in GE, and he was pulled up. So I think both being able to, in theory, make someone's report their boss if need be, or do whatever it takes to basically move the org forward and make the org successful on the people front, dispassionately.
Got it. These are people who are able to identify talent or lack of it, right? So maybe the lack of it, any tips on how founders figure that out, right? So because especially if you're going through the journey first time, how have you enabled that, or is it an innate skill that the founders have?
I think you basically have goals, first of all. If I think at every stage there is a thing that's needed for the team to scale. So for example, if you think about go to market, say a sales driven company, you want with their first few hires, you want people who are ICs. You want people who can sell directly. But the next hire is a sales manager. Now, do you promote this IC, your best IC, to be a sales manager, or do you bring in someone from the outside? Maybe the initial thing is you promote someone internally because they have shown some leadership potential, but it may very quickly turn out that they're unable to coach and mentor people. They're able to establish a good process, repeatable process. They're able to hire good people to come work for them. So all of these things start piling up, and then the company ends up missing their sales target. And so very quickly you start seeing, again, it's really I think as companies grow, it's harder for founders to go and do stuff at the IC level. You hope your manager is able to do that. But what you can expect from managers is, are they able to attract the best talent? Are they able to proactively you basically use the same lens that you use with yourself? Are they able to up-level their teams? If you hear complaints from other cross-functional teams about a certain team, that's a great signal, because everyone wants teams to succeed. And if you hear, say, the product team, you hear complaints about the product team from engineering, from design, from sales, that, and your product leader is being defensive, you almost certainly know that's not a good sign. So defensiveness, not being candid and open, just like with founders. If founders start being defensive about things versus just being open, honest, I made a fault, I made a mistake, here it is, here's how I'm going to fix it. Great. They said, oh, that's not my fault. It's actually the fault of these 3 other people. As soon as you start hearing that multiple times, you
You know,
know there's yeah.
yeah. This is super helpful. And you referred to decision making multiple times, right? And you also written about the SPADE framework. Maybe talk to us a little about that, as well as any other decision making structure you picked up in Square, DoorDash, wherever you've been in many companies that founders should think about and adapt to themselves if it makes sense.
Thank you. First, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about Spade, one of my favorite topics.
Yeah.
It came up actually in 2015, this whole decision framework, 14 actually. Why? Because when we did a company survey at Square, the top thing that people complained about in the employee survey was they felt there was no transparency to decisions, into how or why the decisions were made and even who was making them. They were just announced to the company and like, hang on, what happened here? And so I think in the all hands, Jack said, Gokul is going to take ownership of coming up with a new framework. I was like, I don't know anything about decision making, but I knew a few things that I cared about. So we put together a framework around them. And SPADE is simply, you can just search for it. But at its root, it's around this concept of not being consensus driven, but having a clear decision maker for every important decision. It's again to be used, SPADE or any decision making framework should be used for high stakes, one way door decisions where the consequence of decisions are very hard to reverse. For example, in theory, you're buying a company. That's a great decision where if you buy it, you can't really unbuy it again. So you've got to like look at all the alternatives. So I think very simply, it's all about finding the right person to own the decision, to make the decision and own it. And our belief or my belief is that the person who makes the decision should also be the person who owns the consequences of the decision. Uh, right? So the decision to buy a company should not be corp dev. It should be the GM of the business unit or the CEO. Corp dev is not going to own the decision. It should be the CEO at a company level. It should be Zuck for WhatsApp, as it was, or the GM of the BU, because they will own it going forward. The ownership should not be divorced from the decision maker. That's one facet of it. The second facet is the importance of consulting with a wide number of people, because one thing we realized is people are okay if their opinion or their view of is not the final decision, but they want to be heard. They want to be heard. They want to make sure they're consulted. So you want to make sure you consult a broad range of people. And the third one is you need to make sure that you have a clear objective function as to what are you deciding, what is the objective function. At Square, for example, we had an interesting case where there was a new version of the hardware reader in Australia, if I remember correctly. And the team came to us and said there was a massive disagreement between the hardware team and the marketing team in Australia. We were like, around pricing of this product. We were like, what happened? Upon digging deeper, it turns out that the hardware team was optimizing pricing for market share, and the marketing was optimizing pricing for profit. And so obviously, when you optimize for two different things, you get completely different pricing regimes. And so we clarified, just clarifying what are you trying to optimize for with the decision, what are the top three criteria for success of the decision, instantly makes it clear. So there's a few things like that it's simply so the thing I learned most about decision making from Square, DoorDash, etc., is the importance of having a directly responsible individual for each decision that owns also the consequences of that decision. It's true for projects or decisions, because what happens is, especially in many matrix companies, where you have a business lead for a product, a product lead, an engineering lead, many decisions are like three people are involved, but you don't know which of those. So you have to identify still one of them who's making the decision, and then you hold them accountable for it. They get input from others, but they make the decision.
Got it. And is there any counter of if this is not done well, the startups are going to have a tough time because of that?
I think the biggest counter is that you basically end up with especially young startups, if people are making decisions all over the place that should be made by the founder, you end up with a lot of scope creep and a lot of stuff that is basically just happening. As you know, again, in startups, the key thing is the most important thing is focus on customers and PA, product market fit. And so at that point, at a sub 10% company, the founder should be making all decisions around what. In particular, the what is some of the most important decision, which really determines the direction you're going in. So the more more people are making decisions around the what's, the more scope creep they have. So that's why it's actually important at the early stage to just have one person deciding the what, and then the engineers have to decide how and so on. But the what in particular needs to be held very tightly by the founder for as long as possible, because scope creep and like building a product that's like sprawling but is not remarkable in any one aspect is the reason for depth in many cases, or lack of excellence.
Got it. Super helpful. So I encourage the audience to go and check out Spade, and then obviously we need to talk about AI right now. So before that, one quick point about pivots that companies do. What have you seen? What are the best practices? Any examples that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think one of the best examples of a pivot is a company called Fair, FAIRE. So Fair is a B2B marketplace, and before Fair became Fair, the founding team went through two or three different ideas, which were all very, very different from Fair. I mean, they were just very different. I knew all of the founders. One of the CEO worked for me, and so I thought very highly of them. So I knew ultimately they would find something that was authentic to them, and that's what happened. The ultimate idea of Fair came from the specific problem that the founder Max, the CEO, co-founder and CEO Max, faced when he was running an umbrella business where while he was a student at Yale, and then he continued it, forgot the name of the company, he was building umbrellas. It was very hard for him to get distribution at retail stores. Like he
Mm,
had to knock on each retail store, figure out who would stock it. It's very hard to get access. So Fair essentially was essentially that problem that he faced. He knew that other product makers would also face it. Other brands, how do you get to retail stores? So that's what, and similarly retailers had. He didn't know the problems the retailers faced, but he knew the problems that brands face. And then the retailers had the opposite problem where they didn't know what products to stock in the first place. And when a product, say, didn't sell well, they couldn't really get rid of the inventory easily. So Fair solved the problem for both sides, but it again came from authenticity of the problem for the team. The founder problem fit in some ways, if you could say.
got it. And is there any, like, when is it too long? When do founders hang on too long to an idea before pivot, or any frameworks on how to think about, is it time to pivot or stick to the guts?
Yes, I think if you think about what constitutes success, first you have to have a small group of customers who love and use the product to solve a very specific problem. So first you've got to identify the problem, you've got to build a remarkable product that solves the problem better than every other alternative out there, and then you're going to convince a few customers to get there. The reality is 95% of startups probably fail at these first three things. So I think now it is going to be the case that some of the infrastructure companies are going to take months or years to build these products because it takes longer. Like Nutanix famously raised even from Vinod Khosla at Khosla Ventures capital at like 200 billion posts or something before they had paying customers or with zero in revenue. And those things take time. But for anything application layer, you expect that within 6 months, especially today, you should be able to prove at least a hypothesis around the problem, around your ability to solve the problem, and the fact that you can get a few customers who love your impact and can show ROI. So that's one set of things where if you can't do it in 6 months, you should probably reconsider. There's some issue with the problem definition, your ability to solve it, you're able to convince a few customers. The next set of things happens when you're not able to build a repeatable motion to acquire customers of this type. So I think that's another set, and that's a smaller set, because I do think if you can get 5 customers, you can probably get 50. You can get 50, you can probably get 500. But I think going to 5 to 50, sometimes the DNA of the team is much more product engineering centric. They're unable to think about how to establish a go-to-market motion, and so I think that's you got to try to solve it. So those are the two times. But I think the pivoting should happen more in the first bucket. The second bucket is, I think, more solvable. It's more mathematical solvable, but being able to solve a compelling problem in a remarkable way for a few customers who then love you, use you on a daily basis, I think almost always results in a great company. You want to be honest with yourself if those three things are happening. It's a compelling, high value problem. You're solving it in a way that's solved better than anyone else is solving it. And then your customers actually are loving it, right? If your customers are using you, but they're using you sporadically, they're not like raving about you to other customers. You might delude yourself for a bit, but it's going to come back. So the third point is very, very important. Very, very important.
Got it. And this is true for B2C, B2B, all kinds of companies, or
All kinds of things. Right? B2C is both usage is actually just as important as revenue. It's probably even more important. If they're paying you, not using you, they're going to
yeah,
churn. Right?
yeah.
So I think usage is like so important. A lot of customers, I have 200,000 ARR, 500,000 ARR, but yeah. But do you know, and many B2B companies, they don't track usage properly.
Mm.
What's your DNU? They don't know. Nice. Yeah, they might be paying you, but that's because you signed an annual contract. Month 12, they're going to churn, or month 13, they're not using the
Yeah.
product.
Super helpful. Now let's switch gears, talk about AI, right? So you're in the heart of it in the valley. So talk us through what you're seeing. This is one of the biggest shifts, platform shifts in the mobile, right? So how are you looking at it? Maybe some high level thoughts, then we can go into details.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things is because of fundamental advancements in both the model, obviously now LLMs, at least, with the LLMs have been around for a while with OpenAI, 6, 7 years, maybe even longer now. But 2.5, 3 years ago with ChatGPT launching, now you saw a complete opening of the aperture as what's so possible. So we're seeing three different things. I think on one side, there's better document processing that these LLMs are bringing. Because until recently, I think you basically could extracting structured information from unstructured documents was either unreliable or limited to simple tasks. Today's models can consistently parse things like dense legal contracts, financial statements, not just to pull basic information, but to also summarize them, insights, and categorize them properly and like contextually appropriate, like writing contextually appropriate content, etc. So I think better document processing is one pillar. The second one is browser automation. As you know, the RPA category evolved before browser automation with UiPath, and some of the other companies. But now your browser automation companies and modern AI-driven browser automation products have become really robust, really reliable. So you can basically safely do stuff that humans were able to do, go through complex workflows and extract data, navigate in interfaces, and complete workflows with minimal human oversight. That's the second pillar, browser automation. Third one is voice and conversational agents, basically going multimodal, right? Basically, previously, for at least, even for the first year after ChatGPT, it was mostly text-based. But now, customer support calls, internal employee assistance, vendor negotiations, they could not be done purely with text. Now you can have a voice-based agent. So a multimodal agent now increasingly is becoming a norm, which follows sophisticated multi-stuff interaction. So those three together, each of them is powerful, and three together involve kind of new types of automation and new types of agents. That's what we are seeing, essentially new categories of opportunity being unlocked, which were not possible before at the application. I think like with every few stage, even though obviously the model layers are going to be very important, the reality is most of the value in the model layers is from the application layer itself. At least from a revenue point of view, ChatGPT is much more of OpenAI's revenue than its API products. Similarly, Claude is much more of Anthropic's revenue than. So I think you're going to see the model layers make as much revenue from the application, not as much, make vastly more revenue from the application layer than they from the model infrastructure layer.
So that leads to a question that someone mentioned to me: model eats X, right? So, as in, like, you heard of Uber, of X, and all that, but here the model is improving so much that it could eat the application, right? So that's happening. So how should founders think about that aspect of it? Is what they're building deep enough, and like how should they build something that's sustainable and can be long lasting? Any thoughts on that?
Yes. Yes. I think infrastructure layer, I personally feel, is definitely a potential example there, because I do feel at the infrastructure layer, many of the basic infrastructure tasks are being done by the models. They're able to do tool calling. They're able to do a lot of things that were, you know, environment setting and so on. That were done by infrastructure companies. So I do feel middleware infrastructure companies are going to be more challenged. Now, obviously, it's going to be possible to build some, but I think that's an example of where the models are starting to eat into infrastructure and middleware. So application layer is where you want to stay, I think. And then security is the other one. I don't think you can trust the model for security, maybe evals and a few other areas. But on the application layer, I do think if you look at coding, right? I mean, all of us have probably one company in the coding front. The reality is, I mean, coding is a 1.5 to 2 trillion, software with 1.5 to 2 trillion wages opportunity. There is no way that OpenAI and Anthropic are not going to go after it. I mean, they are massively. And what is crazy is that you're building stuff on top of it, and they are going after it. So there are two alternatives. One, that these things become a monopoly, where two oligopoly, where OpenAI and Anthropic basically, and maybe Gemini, they basically own coding fully end to end. Or you basically have the fact that different models are good at different things. So you basically have agents that allow that prevent dependence on a certain model layer. And so that will be one area where third party could succeed. If you say that Gemini is good for certain kinds of things, Claude is good for certain kind of things, OpenAI is good for certain kind of things, then the models allow you to mix and match different things because the LLMs won't. So that would be our hope as investors, that these agents allow you to not be locked in to any given model, but use the best of breed, and they allow you to say, okay, this is really good for this. Just like, back in the CDN days, you basically had companies like Uyala that, I don't know if you remember Uyala back in the day, Brent Bismarck started. Uyala basically turns out that if you are a video hosting company, you didn't want to be, you could actually get much cheaper rates from a certain CDN at a certain time of the day and better rates from a CDN at a different time of the day. So you want to mix and match CDNs for your content depending on your consumer, depending on when your load patterns are, etc. So these agents, in theory, could help you. So that's the bull case for like a third application layer company. Um, the good news is that there are many verticals. So, but I do think horizontals are going to face intense competition. Horizontals like customer support, sales, and engineering, which are each of them is massive numbers of. If you look at companies, where do they employ the most people or have the most OpEx? Engineering, customer support, and sales.
It,
So I think, yeah, those are the three buckets where you already saw there was some leaked thing where OpenAI had built some SDR calling thing or something like that. So I bet you're going to have those three stacks. You're going to have a support stack. Each of the models is going to have it. You're going to have a engineering stack, product development stack, and you're going to have a GTM stack. Now, those are the three broad stacks. Now, the good news is that there's many different deep verticals within logistics and, all kinds of industrial automation and so on, which require a lot more complexity versus these stacks. And I don't think is worth necessarily, any of these model companies while to go in and talk to these companies and so on. So I think that's where it's true defensibility from the models, because they want partners to take the models and go into those verticals and do stuff with them. They encourage it. Uh, so I think that's where I feel there are pockets of opportunity, big pockets of opportunity.
got it. So take verticals and then go deep into them and find opportunities there and build around that. And then also use agents and connect to multiple models and see if you can get the best value out of the various models instead of being
Yeah,
tied
your
to.
company Spine is a great example. I mean, they're building AI for auto dealerships, and I think that's a great example of a company that's helping local businesses use AI in powerful ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And then speed of execution, which we talked about earlier, versus the model infra choices. Are there any? How should people think about that? Right. So you build very fast on the current model, and then the model changes. Like those are happening as well, right? Yeah.
I think both matter, but speed of execution and I would say velocity matters more than speed. Velocity obviously includes direction, which means choosing the problem to work on
Hmm.
matters more, because if you choose the right problem to work on, which is a growing market, it's an evergreen problem, it's a really painful problem, then those things don't matter. Your customers are going to be pulling the product out of you, and model changes. You can always. It's easy enough to switch models. It's easy enough to switch models. So, but speed and being able to move fast and satisfy your customer needs. I actually think one of the most important moats in today's world is the customer relationship. Once you get a relationship with the customer, that's a moat. And you want to make sure that your competitors or others can't get into the customer. So it's very important to move fast and build multiple products. I had a post that said compound or die. Back 7, 8 years ago, Rippling was one of the few compound startups where they build multiple products. Today, every startup, every company needs to be a compound company sooner than later. Your second product, I would have said 5 years ago, your second product should be built after your first product gets to 5 or 10 million revenue. Today, I would say your second product, you need to start planning and building it as soon as the first product gets to product market fit, probably.
And it's as a ex product person yourself, like the new set of tools that AI provides completely changes the paradigm and the speed at which you can prototype and
Prototype and validate hypotheses. I think complex stuff and a lot of stuff to make it production grade, you still need engineers, but you can validate a lot more things and move much faster at prototyping and figuring out, showing to customers. You don't need to rely on dense PRDs that no one reads. But a prototype plus one-page document that outlines the context, what to build, why to build it, market opportunity, etc., is much more powerful than like a 10-page document that no one ever reads and it gets stale very quickly.
Yeah. Maybe last question. Like there are obviously whole set of startups that built the pre AI or Gen AI era, right? So and they are trying to adapt their business to the new Gen AI world. Like any thoughts around that? Because they have the customer relationship, they have the revenue, they could be at various scales. Like have you seen any best practices there?
Absolutely. The number one best practice is to basically be comfortable with cannibalizing your existing business. And so investors have to be supportive of a J curve in burn, because the only way to get out of this is you need to systematically, you need to build your AI product, which hopefully you can, because you understand these customer needs and you understand the pain point. And then you need to migrate your customers systematically from the old. And many times the new product will basically have maybe less revenues because it'll be consumption based, etc. But that's the only way. So there will be a painful period, but if you don't do that, you die. If you can't do that, then you just should sell the company right now, because those customer relations are valuable. Like I said, they are valuable. You have the data, you have the customers, you have the know-how, and it's not that hard to build if you have those things. If you have a couple of people who know how to build these workflows, and using the AI models have made it very easy to use them to build it. So I think I think in the next, by mid 2026, if you're not able to make that shift, companies should just pack up and sell potentially.
Have you seen anyone do this well?
There are many companies. I think I won't name them, but yeah, there are many of the portfolio companies. There's one company that got to 30 or 40 million revenue pre-AI. AI disrupted them. They launched an AI agent, and they are now migrating. In the first year, they went to 0 to 20 million, but obviously much of it is migrating that 40 million. So 40
Mhm.
million got to probably 20, 25 million. So they lost 15 million in revenue or something like that. But it's now growing much faster, and they actually have a path forward that is exciting to themselves and to investors.
Got it. And for the people who are trying to disrupt that those kind of businesses, anything, any words of advice for them? Like, they don't have any of that baggage, like so.
Yeah, I think you have to build unique experiences that are steeped in the capabilities of the AI, that are steeped in, almost magic, and use things like multimodal, which, the previous generation of companies wouldn't have done properly. Multimodal, and make it auto magic in some ways through document processing, um, through the multimodal experience, through some of the things I mentioned, those capabilities. Try to use them to make the AI, like browser automation, to make it really set up and onboarding, right? A lot of these companies had complex setup and onboarding. Now with these things, setup and onboarding can be done much better and much faster. So can you where do you make it remarkable? I think every startup has to figure out which part of the which part of the product do they focus on making it remarkable, versus it's okay, but you can't make the whole product remarkable. You have to have one or two places where it's just amazing, where it's just a wow moment, and that customers really care about that, because it takes away hours of their, gives them hours or days back to them, or it eliminates a human role or whatever the case may be.
Okay. Thank you. That's super helpful. We covered a lot of things from how you pick founders, how you work with them, how you build the relationship with the founders, have the hard conversations, the decision making framework and pivoting, and then finally the AI side of things. So we covered a lot of ground. I'm sure this will be super helpful for the founders listening, and really appreciate you taking the time. I just want to close with a rapid fire round if that's okay with you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So maybe quick, whatever comes to your mind. One underrated founder quality.
Impatience, being impatient with the speed of these things, more impatient with everything.
Mm. Favorite underrated product in your daily life.
Apple Notes, indispensable, underrated.
Got it. Last book or podcast that made you think.
Titan, it's a biography of John Rockefeller Jr., incredible book.
Cool. I'll check it out. One AI use case you're most excited about right now.
Personally, AI digital clones. So there's a way to clone yourself, and you can make a public clone, and then you can use that to scale yourself in helping people.
Got it. Cool. If you aren't investing or building, what would you be doing?
Teaching and helping people. I think I love teaching, I love advising, I love helping, and I think teaching would have been a great, great career to pursue.
Okay, that's great. I think you're doing that through this podcast for sure. Really appreciate you taking the time, Gokul. Thanks a lot.
I mean, thank you for having me. Really excited for this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.